Hello.
My guest today is Crispin Glover. As a filmmaker, Crispin's films are notoriously singular and dreamlike, taking risks that other filmmakers seldom do. In the late 1980s, Crispin started his own publishing company, Volcanic Eruptions, which turned into a production company in the 1990s for his film works. He's been touring since 2005 with his two feature films, What Is It from 2005 and its sequel, It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine from 2007. With his latest film, No, You're Wrong, or Spooky Action at a Distance. He stars in the film alongside his now late father, the actor Bruce Glover, in this surrealist film within a film that spans 4 generations. And as an actor, Crispin has left his mark on viewers with such iconic performances in films such as Wild at Heart, River's Edge, Willard, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, The Beaver Trilogy, Reuben and Ed, and the 1989 indie film Twister with Harry Dean Stanton. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome the Revolutions Per Movie, Crispin Glover. Hi, Crispin.
Hello. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Total honor. I mean, you're about my age, so I was me and my friends were growing up with you visually as, River's Edge was coming out, Twister, bootleg copies of the Oakley Kid or Reuben and Ed. But what we also had in our houses and laps was the album you made in 1989.
Oh, right.
Called The Big Problem Does Not Equal the Solution.
Yeah.
The Solution Equals Let It Be. And that fits so well in, like, next to my Ann Magnuson record, or Lydia Lunch, or John Gornio, is that how you say his name? The poet in New York who made records. But they were like theater of the mind records, right?
Okay.
And I loved it because it was yours, right? It wasn't you performing in a movie. It was like a look into your mind. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yes, it is mine on many levels. Although it was produced by Barnes and Barnes,
Right.
who people would their most famous song was that song Fish Heads. They did a lot of novelty work, novelty records, and they approached me to just start doing some recordings. And I had listened to Dr. Demento, so I was aware of them, and we recorded. I think we were. I think first we recorded a book reading, and then I think we recorded the song, and then they told me they wanted to make a whole album. I wasn't really sure what they had wanted to do, and then I started. I actually recorded a number of things, and then they said they wanted to record an album, and then I came up with a concept of something, and there were certain things we'd recorded that didn't quite fit into the concept, which I think they didn't want to get rid of them, but we ultimately did get rid of the those that didn't fit in, and then we worked on it for a long time. On my own projects, I tend toward working a long time.
Yes.
Like the movie that I'm about to start touring with, I've been working on for many years.
Yeah, since 2013, right?
Well, that's when we started shooting it, but I started developing it years before that, because I started developing it the year that I premiered my second film, It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine, in Sundance. I started developing the screenplay at that point. Then I started building the sets in 2010, and then yes, we started shooting in 2013.
Is that frustrating for you? Because, when you're working on someone else's movie, it moves fast, right? But here you have these projects that often take 10 years.
Well, it's funny because I of course I would rather I could just make a movie every 6 months or
Right.
a year, whatever. That would be better, but I, for some reason, I don't know why, I do have a genuine patience for my own artwork. I've done artwork since I was a kid, and I've always been patient with artwork. I guess, and I'm actually patient with Most there's certain things I'll get impatient with, but nothing to do with art. Um, so it might almost be a flaw that I'm a little overly patient, and that I should. But I fund the films myself,
Right.
so when you when you fund something like this yourself, there's always there's the battle between the artist and the funder, and the artist always wins, but then the funder knows that if things are done really rapidly, it costs more. So that it makes sense to just sort of say, all right, well, we'll take time and make it right. But I have some ideas on how to expedite. I've already started shooting another
Oh,
production,
amazing.
and
Is it part of the trilogy or is
no,
it okay?
no, and this one isn't part of the trilogy either.
Right.
Um, no, I started shooting, what is it, the first part in 1995. I realized 30 years ago. And it might have been 96, but it might have been starting to be developed. I thought I'd started shooting in 96. Somebody said they thought it was 95. Anyhow, um, I uh, I toured with that from 2005 when it was premiered in Sundance to till the pandemic of 2020. So being that I'd been working on it essentially for 30 years, and the other project, there is a thematic element in both of these. Well, in what will be the trilogy of films, there's an ongoing theme, and I've been on that theme. I had been on that theme for a long time already. So, and I like the theme. It's a valid theme to spend time on, but I like different things. I don't only like one thing. So
Right.
I feel like it was a good idea for me to veer off and do some other thematic work. And there's more than just, I have a lot of movies I'd like to make. I'm not, it's not, yeah, so we'll see. But I ultimately do want to get back to part three of the trilogy, but I, it's fine to step away from it for some time.
Sure. I wanted to ask about your touring with it because, before we started the episode, we were talking about, media art centers across the nation. And some of them are still around. The one in Portland closed, sadly, Northwest Film Center, where I worked. But it was exciting. I would look up, and then Werner Herzog would be standing in the doorway, there to do a talk, show a film, sometimes not even of his own work. But I loved when artists traveled to talk about, um, what they were going to present. And, you were doing, a slideshow, a live reading, screening your movies, question and answer, like a really like long form evening. Was there an inspiration? Had you seen that done before? Or was that the need just to be like, this is like the whole package I want to give an audience? They need to see this film with everything around it.
Well, what happened was, but it's funny you mentioned Werner Herzog because I saw Werner Herzog do a lot of Q&As. I've been always uh, I've always loved Werner Herzog's films, and then I've gotten to know him as well. And he's
Amazing.
two filmmakers that I admired greatly. Both were genuinely helpful to me in different ways. David Lynch, uh, he, I've been mentioning this in a lot of these interviews I've been doing, but he wrote in his, there was a book that came out that was an autobiography and a biography. He would write a chapter that was autobiography, and then I believe it was Christine McKenna. but she would write. I think I had done an interview with her, and she asked me to send something in for the book, which I did. But he wrote in one of his chapters that he had produced What Is It? Now, the thing is,
Right.
had I known, had I known he'd thought that, I would
Yes.
have, when I presented in Sundance, I would have, of course, said uh, David Lynch
Big
presents.
letters.
But the
Of
reason that
course.
I didn't, it was a mix up. I um, he had agreed to executive produce a different screenplay. Well, the one that would be part three of the trilogy, It Is Mine. And I had gone to one of the larger production companies that was kind of the go-to company at the time for so-called independent films, and they were interested. But after a number of meetings and conversations, they were concerned about funding a film wherein a majority of the characters would be played by actors with Down syndrome. So it was decided I should make a short film, and that wasn't a discussion I had with David Lynch, but he had already agreed to be the executive producer. But it was decided that I should write a short film or a short screenplay to make a short film, and it would have some of the thematic elements. And I wrote a short 20 something page screenplay called What Is It? And and I decided to make all of the characters be played by actors with Down syndrome. That's when it was the short film. Uh, then when we shot that in 4 days, and when I initially cut it together, I taught myself how to use Adobe Premiere with a manual. There was no online tutoring.
Wow. So 2005.
Yeah, well, this was 1996.
That existed then?
Yeah, and I remember calling up Adobe Premiere because at the time I it's funny because I it took me so long to make the film that when I started, I was actually a home digital editing pioneer because
Yeah.
nobody was doing it. Called up Adobe Premiere, and maybe I spoke with Apple, but QuickTime at the time when I first started doing this long form movie, QuickTime would go out of sync at like a 1 minute and 20 something seconds. And I
Wow.
called up I can't remember if the conversation was with Adobe Premiere. I think it was with Adobe Premiere. And I was saying, I'm not just making a short video. I'm making a long form video. And somebody said on the other line, they said, the person I was talking to said, oh yeah, there's some guy in Iowa that's doing something like that. It was like I was really pushing the thing.
Yeah, and you're calling not using the internet
Right.
because that was not
And it
there.
was
So
long
yeah.
distance pricing.
Right.
But
Wow.
so but it wasn't too long thereafter that it got in sync. So I was editing these long things that would be out of sync for a long time. And then finally they introduced, I don't know, it was a number of months later, and then clicked in and everything was in sync which was great. But yeah, when I first started editing What Is It? It was before Adobe Premiere actually could sync longer than.
Wow.
But then it took, it took however many years. So by then, many people had done it. I couldn't take any credit of being a first, but I really was one of the early people using it for that.
And then when you're traveling and projecting the work, going from theater to theater, and all of them are different. Um, you know, was that easy to put together? Do you have a roadmap of like, I can go here and do it in Seattle, then I can go here, or how are you putting that together?
Well, what happened was with the slideshow. So I first published Rat Catching. I had made these books were handmade
Yes.
books, old books from the 1800s that I reworked. And it was just an accidental thing that happened. There's something on Ranker that has it's incorrect saying how it came about that I made the book.
Huh.
I'll say what happened was I was at an acting class on La Brea Boulevard. It was a 4 day week class, good class. It was called Loft Studios. It was a good acting studio. And down the street was an art gallery, and I would go in and look at things, but they had a nice art bookstore upstairs. So I'd go and look at the art books, and then they had one small section that had handmade artists' books that were one-off books that you could purchase. And I would look through them, and there was one artist that had taken an old binding from the 1800s, and they had put their own artwork in it. So I thought that seemed interesting, and I was doing artwork with India Ink at the time, and so I thought, yeah, I'm going to just do my own artwork in the book. Um, so I went to a bookstore in Melrose that's no longer in existence. None of them are in existence. The art
I
gallery isn't
know.
there. The
It's
studio isn't there. But
yeah. It's amazing. I'm so glad I am the age I am and got to experience, you know,
right.
the weirdo, stores where you're like, nothing sells in here, but damn it, they have the coolest stuff, and I'm gonna support
Well,
them.
it's around. It's just it's way more expensive now. Yeah,
Okay.
you can buy books that have illustrations from the 1800s in it, but it's really costly. At the time, I could buy a pathology book or an encyclopedia illustrated science book from the 1800s, or a animal husbandry book, and they'd be $5 or something. It was I bought them. This was great, but so I found one binding, and I started doing my artwork in it, and I I also had purchased these books that had images that I was going to rework, and I put them in. And I've always liked words in art. So I saw some words. I thought, okay, I'll leave some words just randomly on one page. Then I put some more artwork in. Then I left a few more random words. And then when I started paging back through it, I realized, oh, there's a new story starting. And I I liked it, so I just kind of I kept going on with that. And then I finished that book and I showed it to people. People liked it. And I just liked that this thing had come up, and I ultimately made about somewhere between 20, I think around 23 of them. And there's different types. Some of them were story oriented, some of them were with the randomness of the words, but then some I found images and I would make the stories. Some of them were just more art objects. But then I first published the book in 1988. So I was 24 years old. I did it in the proper way where I got an ISBN number. In fact, I still have the ISBN numbers that I purchased in 1988.
Ah, wow.
And they've updated R.R. Bowker is the company that it's for books and print, which was before when you had to go to a bookstore and say, I want this book, then they'd look in books and print for the ISBN number. It would give the publisher's information. But it's still there. It still serves purposes. But that's what makes you an official publisher in the US. So I became an official publisher and official published author when I was 24 with the book Rat Cat.
Amazing.
And of course, when I was talking to bookstores and such about how to distribute, the people would say, well, what happens often is an author will do a book reading, and you could get people to come in and do a book reading. But the books were extremely visual, so it didn't really make sense because the just to do a book reading, because part of what happens is visual. So I realized I'd have to have a visual component to it. And there were people around that were doing poetry readings and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I knew there was a market of some kind. I was thinking about it, but uh, there was a film festival near you, not where's Evergreen State College?
I went. That's where I went. Olympia. I
Olympia.
went to
It was in
college there.
Olympia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
The Olympia Film Society.
It was the Olympia Film Festival,
Yeah,
and so that was 1993, I believe, and they were having a retrospective the work I'd done at the time, and they invited me up, and I thought this is a good time to experiment with the slideshow. So I had physical 35 millimeter slides made with the old carousels and the cords on them. And you had to have two carousels to and somebody to switch them physically back and forth. But the first time I did it, it worked. The show worked. It's still the first. I do variations of shows, but it's the show that I do with what is it? The first slideshow. It always did well. I got invited to do it other places. People really liked the show, and I was wanting to make my own films. So I realized this would be a good way to self distribute because I for whatever reason I've always well here's the reason I when I published Rat Catching and you mentioned the record
yeah. There's the track.
that's right there's a track from me reading Rat Catching
Yeah, selected readings from Rat Catching. Right.
that's right
With the static that you can hear, that you can hear the crackle of the vinyl sample that they're doing.
oh good I it sounds like
Yeah, and that record has the most coughing on any record I own. It's great. There's a lot of like
well there's one on purpose
yes, yes, a cigar. Right,
yeah but
right.
the and there was a pamphlet that has some of the reprintings of rat catching. I think the only one it didn't have was on the cassette, but the CD had the pamphlet and the record, the vinyl had the pamphlet. So that came out in 1989. And when I saw that Rat Catching, the book that I had published and paid for, had sold this essentially the same amount that the record had sold, I made far more money on the book that I'd published. I had mentioned to Bill Mooney and Robert Hamer were the producers of Barnes and Barnes, and they had had good record contracts, I think, with CBS, and they were used to making money that way. And I was familiar with that the residents had pressed their own records, and I did suggest to uh, Bill Mooney and Robert Hamer that we might press our own records, and they were just like, no, that's not a good idea.
Just a different like world for them. They're
Right,
not
they
used
weren't
to that.
used to it, and they had made good money at the time with
Sure.
it, and so you know I said okay we didn't have a big good deal with it, but so I saw that it made me recognize the corporations that were there to take as much money from the person making the stuff and do as little as they could possibly do to take that money. So
Yes.
it made me very much understand I should do things as much as I could on my own. So for whatever reason, I was well. That's the reason. I just thought no, I should just try to distribute. And I knew that my own films would be unusual too. So I and there's been I would have been able to sell my movies to various small companies and have them, but I knew I would have far more wherewithal to take it into different cities. Because what they'll do is they'll play it in New York, LA, Chicago, and then they try to take as much money from the well at the time it would have been video sales or DVDs and what have you.
Yeah.
But so I that's that's a model I just came up with relatively early, and it's worked. I on my first two films, I did recoup on the what I spent on them. Although,
That's amazing.
yeah, because by far most movies lose money.
I mean, at my video store, it was littered with like things from Strand releasing or things that you said. You're
Right.
right. would show in San Francisco, LA, New York, and then they wouldn't really push, like, you wouldn't know it unless you were looking for it
That's right.
to bring it into
Yeah.
a store. Most Hollywood or Blockbuster or independent stores, or even independent stores, wouldn't even touch much of this stuff because there was no one to talk to, no one to get any sense of what it is. So I think it's really brilliant that you were self promoting and self releasing.
But also the way that I recouped isn't through the box office.
Mm-hmm.
The way I've recouped, it took me 6 years of touring before I recouped, I believe. But
Okay.
when I'm saying recouped, that's a quarter from the box office, a quarter from uh well, half of it's from the what I make for the live shows. Then a quarter would be from the box office, and a quarter would be from the book sales.
Okay.
So in reality, I've only recouped a quarter at 6 years. I don't think I've at 6 years I recouped a quarter of the costs, and I toured for 15. I'm quite certain I've never recouped the actual box office of either of the films. But for me, ultimately, that didn't matter. What was important was just that I recouped. So the whole thing as a single entity is what recoups. The new film, No, You're Wrong, was a much more expensive film than both of those two first films combined. So I would
Yes.
have to tour perhaps for 20 years or something. I'll never recoup on this film, but there was a different structure because a lot of the investment was the infrastructure in the Czech Republic where I built my sets, which I can utilize for like the new production I've already started, and that will make the other productions have a high production value, but at a much lower cost. So I can make much less expensive films that maybe at some point I would sell to somebody. But there's a part of me that actually really likes touring. I actually do like the way that it's worked out, where I perform the shows. I make different variations of shows for each film, and then show the film, then have the Q&A, and then the book signing. I talk to people, and
Yeah.
it's a kind of a nice way to have a genuine interaction. I think that the audience appreciates it. I do like to see what people are getting from it, and so it's a genuine one-to-one feedback that is educational for me.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, and as a touring musician myself, I work the merch table. People love to ask questions. They just like to see you there. It's and it helps. It really helps. Like if I just had a stranger there selling stuff, it'd be a much different experience than like they're like, "Oh, this is the performer I just saw and now they're here."
Wait, you're saying, well, I don't physically sell it. I do have somebody physically selling it, but
Okay.
I have a very regulated way of doing it. The hardest, at the same time that I like it, it's the hardest part of the show for me. I I I should I well, it's the truth. If you take those tests online about if you're an extrovert or an introvert, and the definition by Jung of an extrovert is somebody that gains energy by being around other people, and the definition of an introvert is somebody that gains energy when they're on their own. I fit into that latter definition. I have, and so as much as I do like doing the signings, after that that really takes it out of me. I have to go
Sure.
and be on my own and recuperate. But so I'm putting a lot of energy out just meeting and talking to people. So and there's a way that the line is regulated, and then there's somebody that sells the merchandise. But they're coming and talking to me, and I'm doing
Right,
selling and
exactly.
all that.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And you never know what people are going to bring either energy wise, but I
Sure.
think I can I ask a kind of a naive question about acting. And for instance, your performance, we talked about David Lynch earlier, Cousin Dell in Wild at Heart, which the character was not in the book. So was that written for you in mind, or did you have to audition for that? Because I can't imagine anyone else doing that
No,
role?
I didn't audition for it. I don't know about the creation of the character. I had met David Lynch. I never read for David Lynch. I had
Okay.
met him for a different movie because I acted in two different things that he directed. There's that and the pilot he direct the he there were three episodes. He directed two of them. I was in one of the ones he directed, and then there was another one directed by a different director. But so I worked with him as an actor for him as an actor twice, and then he really genuinely I didn't complete all that story about him, but he really did the executive producer was the right title for him for what is it I he I was able to communicate with him about it. I saw him after that realization. There were no bad feelings or anything. I
Right.
just I he's just great. He's one of the greatest people I've ever known, and genuinely helped me for real with my filmmaking. So I'm eternally grateful to him. But also, Werner Herzog was helpful in a different way. They're different kinds of people. He wouldn't be an executive producer in the film, but just talking to me, the personalities of they're both great filmmakers and great people, but personality wise, David Lynch is more. Um, he's less verbal in a way. Herzog will look into your eyes, and you're having a that kind of intensity that he has in his filmmaking. He has in person, but I mean, he's friendly. You don't feel like
Oh yeah.
there's the famous clip of him talking about the birds screaming in pain, which is a great clip.
Oh no, even when he was just in the doorway of the media art center, I was, and I was being introduced to him. It was like, yeah, I just didn't even know how to. Yeah, I mean, he was lovely, but it was
Yeah,
still
yeah,
like, and it was just small talk, but it was like
yeah,
I can feel Werner Herzog,
yeah.
like he's maybe something's here,
No, definitely.
I'm
Yeah.
interested,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's very present. I've seen anybody he talks to, he looks in their eyes and
Yes,
it isn't small talk, it's real
yeah,
connection. Yeah.
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 Well, here's my naive question about that. For instance, Cousin Dale, Lane and River's Edge, Ruben and Ed, they have a real musicality to those performances in terms of the way you move, right? Like Cousin Dale doing his move out on the sidewalk, Lane deciding to like lie down on the rock at the end of the movie, or Ruben, just the way he moves. Have you ever used music to like define and help come up with a character's traits?
No, not that I can think of, but I've used music off camera a couple of times. No, once, only one time. I used music, and it just so happened the sound guy had. I tend toward listening to, uh, for lack of a better word, classical music, orchestral, older music, and he happened to have something. It was a scene in Willard, and there was an emotionality to it, and I did use it to help me get to have some emotional elements, and it actually was helpful. And I've never done that before or since, but it for whatever reason, I've used different techniques for different things at different times.
Well, it's interesting because like Lane is the personification of the music that's being played in the car. You know what I mean? Even though I'm sure that was added later,
Sure.
it has such a way of being that is like, yeah, that music has that kind of musculature
Yeah.
and kind of energy and kind of punctuation. And so when we saw that film, we were blown away because we were like, we get this. We know this energy. It's real.
Yeah, that there was well that was a good script, and the words were well written. Funny
Mhm.
enough, that was my first encounter with the word dude. I had not heard for whatever reason, maybe I might, you would feel like I must have heard the word
Yeah, California, right?
right, but it was man.
Okay, okay.
At some point, things became dude, but before it was man, and there were only a few things I put in to it. There was "Okay, listen up" was the only sentence I added in,
Wow. Yeah, okay.
which came with the dialect. Okay, listen up. So, and I've always hated it when I heard people say that. I hated listen up because but it's an interesting thing in the Czech. I own property in the Czech Republic, and there's somebody there's different people that help work at the property at different times, and and somebody that I was working with was saying it's on you, meaning it's your decision. We of course are used to saying it's up to you,
Right.
which is not unlike listen up. It's sort of a royal. It's up to you, Your Majesty.
Right.
It's a nicety that we're used to. But
Right.
if somebody says it's on you, it feels like, ooh, what's on me?
Right.
It feels awful. But listen up is like you're below me. Listen up to me. It's a
Yes.
very obnoxious thing to say, really.
Oh, it's
so,
amazing.
so that was the only line I added, and I did throw in some mans as opposed to dude. But it's hard for me to believe that that was the first time I encountered dude, but maybe it was the first time I encountered it in a script. But I had the sensation because it felt so odd to me. But it was very clear that this was somebody that spoke like that, dressed like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it took some work and doing to get those things, but yes, it was clear what kind of music that character would listen to. We didn't have any of the music on the set, but the music was completely appropriate for the characters.
Yeah, I mean it's an amazing performance. And again, because you're our age, we're watching somebody of our generation just like level us. It was really exciting growing up with you as an actor. I'll just say
Oh,
that.
well, good.
You mentioned Willard earlier, and it's fascinating because not many lead actors in a film also get to direct a music video and sing. And you directed the music video for Ben.
Right.
Did you know there was going to be a music video component? How did that? Because that is a beautiful piece of work, and I know that David Brothers, who you collaborate with,
Yeah.
was instrumental in the visualization of it. And to me, it's like it's got like your films do that. It's not even heightened realness, what I would call it, but like how like Altman's "Fool for Love" or like even Carell by like Fassbender, like there's this unreality to way that a wall is painted, you know?
Yeah, I was looking it up recently. What was the terminology they used? There was some video I watched about it. Oh, and it was just a few weeks ago, and it's going to slip my mind. It'll probably come into my head when we're talking about something else. But yeah, that's that. It's there are decisions that people make in filmmaking of, does one want something to look like a documentary that's not art directed, or going to the extreme of it looks like a stage set or geometrical pattern or something. And I tend toward well, another thing I've been talking a lot about is surrealism, and I've liked surrealism since a very young age, and was more aware of the arts, graphic arts, visual arts, as being something you went to see in a museum, and I appreciated it
Mm-hmm.
as a kid. But I didn't really think that way about movies until later. So when I was growing up, I would go see movies and I would watch television. But I wasn't thinking of it that way. It wasn't until I was 16 when I learned how to drive and I was already studying acting. I was going to see the various Revival House movies, and they were, this was 1980, so I was seeing movies from the 70s, 60s, or from the 20s, all different periods. But it was at this point when I started recognizing the film as art. Although I remember there was a book called Film as Art, which I was going through my parents' stuff at the like clearing things out and saving certain things, and I found the book. I think it's, I can't remember the author's name right now, but it is about that subject matter, film as art, and it was around since I was a kid. So on some level, I had to be aware of it, but I really didn't equate it until I was thinking. Well, I was watching these films in the various revival houses in starting in 1980, and that got me very excited.
It's a ton of work for a promotional video for a song that's for the film that you're the lead in.
Well, funny enough, that's the only time I've directed something that I had a budget for. Everything else I've directed, I paid for myself. So it was nice. Yeah, and David and I had we yeah, wait, had no, wait, had we already shot Everything Is Fine? What year was that? 2003. Yeah, we'd already shot Everything Is Fine. So yeah, David, he had a warehouse in Salt Lake City, Utah, which when I turned What Is It into a feature from a short film, um, I talked with David Brothers about it, and I wanted to. What we shot in LA in the initial 4 days was location shooting, but I knew David was good with making sets. He had done a lot of photo sets, and he'd done videos as well. He's an excellent artist. He was great to collaborate with on both What Is It as a set decorator, or a set, not decorator, set builder,
Mm-hmm.
and then both doing set building and co-directing on It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine. But so we'd worked a lot together. And there's this other movie that I started making also with David Brothers as a co-director called The Backward Swing, based on one of my books that we shot on video. And I should put that out at some point. I should edit it, but the films have taken precedent. But there's fascinating stuff about that as well. But so that, yeah, David Brothers and I talked a lot about that, and we agreed. It was, there is something about the slight non-reality of knowing that you're looking at a set, which is almost, it's a little more beautiful than if it's, you're fooled to thinking you're not on a set, which
Yeah.
you're never really fooled. Like you can always kind of tell, but I mean, it depends. There certainly are movies where there are great sets that you get pulled into and you're not really conscious about the sets, but there's usually just some touch that says this is a set, and that's when it really becomes very beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and your work has that. And I just wanted to say that I was really blown away by that piece of work because
Were you able to see the preview of the new
I
film?
have, and I
The
wanted to
trailer?
ask you about that because, well, first of all, I want to ask you about you must have a love of punctuation because your titles of your album, books,
Or
films,
sentences?
yeah, it's like, I'm like, is it no, you're wrong, or spooky action at a distance? Like, I hope I'm putting the right emphasis, but if there's an
Yeah.
exclamation that says, no, you're wrong, I feel like I want people to go get a ticket and go like, 2 4, no, you're wrong, and do it. Um,
Yeah. Well, it's also it was something I was contemplating with this film. Of course, when you're starting to publicize it, people say, "Okay, well, give us a single sentence about it," which I've done for. I did it for the first film. I don't think I did it for It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine. What is it? Had a kind of a tagline or log line, whatever they call it. I don't think I had one for Everything Is Fine, but I did give a bit of a description about it. But this film, I started writing descriptions of it, and then I started realizing there's something. The film is about this, but there's something else that's going on, and I mean, maybe at some point I'll feel like I should put a single sentence about it, but it's also I don't think it still hasn't been corrected. There's a IMDb doesn't have they don't even have the correct title on it. The correct title is No, You're Wrong or Spooky Action at a Distance. And they just have No, You're Wrong. And that's not the only mistake.
Right.
I haven't put a single thing into the IMDb. I've tried, it won't let me.
Oh, jeez.
Other people have put things into the
Ah,
IMDb that which are incorrect.
that's
And
horrible.
for some reason it lets them, but it won't let me do it.
The artist.
And if I try to correct I get a thing
Ah,
back 72 hours later that says it's not accepted. And
wow.
so I'm having to send everybody the final credit scroll because that actually has clues more than if I were to give a like a tagline. I mean, maybe it's too much, but I just those taglines always like. I went on to Chat GPT and I talked to friends, about kind of giving those certain sounding lines, but
Yeah.
that's what it ends up sounding like is one of those lines.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how you do it for your films either. You can't do it justice, you know. Are you so the film like you said, I've seen the trailer. The film is opening. I'm going to put links in the show notes to where it's going to be playing shortly. Um Before I ask about the release of the film and the working with your dad. I'm so sorry about your dad. I'm so glad
thank
that you got to work with him in this film.
yeah,
Um I wanted to ask about, you talked about your love of classical music, and I know in this film, you're using like Beethoven and Vivaldi, but you're also doing like Tin Pan Alley, like I'm forever, I'm forever blowing bubbles, and I did notice that Sean Lennon is doing vocals for like the Dream Toddler, and I was like, all those elements together, I'm like how do you well, talk about Sean. I just was curious about like how you decide like does the music ever inform like your edit or your decisions on how you're going to
absolutely.
shoot it? Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, very much.
Okay.
Yeah, very much. When I do the I think for yeah, every film. Did I do it for Everything Is Fine? I didn't do it for Everything Is Fine because David Brothers was co-directing on that, so
Mm-hmm.
and he was really in on the sets. But for What Is It, and for the new film, I did storyboards for both of those films for a lot of different reasons, and some of it having to do with sets. For What Is It, I just really wanted to so, and then I'll animate them and look at the movie as much as possible so I can kind of be ready to think visually, what have you. But particularly for the last film, I had to figure out exactly what shots I needed in order to build the sets.
Okay.
So I had to know that I had everything ready to shoot the scenes I needed. So I- I'll animate those storyboards with music.
Oh, okay.
And the music, there's usually a musical I'll choose the themes in advance. It doesn't even matter if I stay with those themes, but I'll choose the themes in advance for each character or each thematic element, and then I'll edit that together and have the whatever it is 10-minute outline of the film and thematic elements in terms with music. And I've also just in the last screenplay, the one that I just started shooting, which is the first one I based on a book from the 1800s, and I'll write the I've written the music cues into each of the characters. And again, once you get into editing, then it can change. So with Charlotte, who Charlotte Kemp Moll, who did the orchestration for the and did a great job for the orchestration of the music for the film. Um, what I had done was the whole film was edited with music that I had chosen, and then Charlotte re-recorded the music and re-orchestrated the
Oh,
music.
wow. Okay.
But it's based on the music that was in the edit.
Hmm.
There was something that actually changed really recently. 3 months ago, I had had the film locked for years. The post production took 5 years.
Wow.
It's not. It was also I'll say partly from pandemic, but
Yeah.
I won't even use that excuse. Really, it's. I don't want to have a 5 year post production again.
No. Well, it's here. It's now. Yeah. My heart goes out to you just hearing you say it. So.
but yeah, so the film was locked for 5 years. I mean, I knew that there were some things that I would want to change, and it did have to do with the music. I was cutting a few months ago. I was getting things ready to release, and I needed to cut a trailer. I've cut various trailers at different times, but I didn't have all the color correction took 2 years because there's five different time periods in the film: 1868, 1888, 1918, 1948, and contemporary. And I didn't plan. The film was shot on 35 millimeter negative Fuji film stock. This will be the last film ever shot that is released on Fuji film stock.
That's
Although the
heartbreaking.
the
Yeah.
contemporary stuff was shot with Kodak, but well, yeah. And my first film, What Is It, was the last film ever released that was shot on Agfa.
Oh, wow. I don't know Agfa. That was a 16 millimeter stock or.
16, well, it was a 35 millimeter stock as well, but
Okay.
Agfa was a German film stock. And all of them have slight different tonalities and color. They are all beautiful stocks. Kodak's a great stock. Fuji was a beautiful stock, and Agfa was a beautiful stock. Agfa was more uh, reddish pastel tones, very beautiful stock.
Hmm.
Then Fuji tends toward having very nice greens and yellows. Also a beautiful stock. And Kodak's a great stock. I won't disparage any of them. They're all great in different ways. I think Kodak is a little more in the browns, but it's a very nice, crisp stock. It's great.
No, your films look amazing. Even the trailer I've seen of the new one, I'm just like, like with the child being sent down the river in the basket. It's just like, I'm like, I don't know how you do this because you're building the sets at your place in your studio house. I don't know. I haven't visited yet.
It's in the Czech Republic. There's a chateau that was built it was reconstructed in the mid 1600s. In the 30 years war, there's probably been structures there since the 1000s, but it was destroyed in the 30 years war, and then structures that had been there before were reconstructed, I think, in 1640 something, and it was constructed into a quadratic structure, for lack of a better word, with a courtyard in the middle. But some of the I can tell it's obvious that some of the rooms are far older and they were part of a rampart, which is part of why it was destroyed. It had some kind of military function at one point, and so the I bought. different parts at different times, but next to it is they called them former horse stables or farm buildings, 18,000 square feet. I knew they were going to be available, and I bought those subsequently. There's other houses that surround it that I own as well. It was part of a big structure or compound. Well, yeah, it had
Compound's great. I get it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
chateau is the correct word. Czech word would be zamek. And so it served an industrial purpose, and so I've used it for an industrial purpose. It's a different industrial purpose than it was originally built for, but it was actually great for an industrial purpose. I would not recommend anybody do what I did unless they're doing exactly what I did. Like I mean, there are people that will buy big old, manors for their luxury or whatever. I didn't buy it for that. I bought it for a business purpose. I mean, if somebody has a lot of money and they want to do it for luxury or what have you, I guess. But I still wouldn't recommend it for that. I
Right.
for an industrial use, it's made sense. But so there's 18,000 square feet, and it took 2 years to build all the sets. It was built by Ukrainian workers, kind of in Czech. The Ukrainians will come down from Ukraine, kind of like in the US, we have people coming up from south of the border because it's a lower economy, similar, Ukraine's a lower economy than Czech. And they did really good work. Um, and yeah, the trailer, the thing about the trailer, I'm going to cut other trailers together at some point. I actually didn't cut the trailer for showing kind of the spectacular sets. It actually, there are some really good looking sets that I don't have in the trailer that I should put into another trailer. I got interested in the watch, which is a more it's a thematic that happens in the film. And
And the symbol that's I'm sorry, that symbol has appeared in your earlier films. The eye with the tendrils, I believe,
oh,
was
well, you're right.
and with the three chains.
Yes, you're right. It is in what
What is
is it?
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I, it's funny. I didn't even think about that, but that is right. I used it in this. I redesigned it, but it's actually only briefly in what is it? I like I was saying about words in art. I also like symbols in art, but I had some in what is it? What is it was a film designed to work in the taboo, and I had symbols in that people get really upset about, which is understandable. I know, but I still like having symbols in the film. So I thought, okay, well, here's a symbol that people aren't going to get really upset about, because this film wasn't designed for that reason. But graphic imagery is interesting, and it's interesting. It's interesting in books, and it's interesting in film as well. There's a thematic element that comes with that uh, image and the watch being passed from person to person. So I was cutting that together. And Charlotte, when we started, before we went into the studio and recorded it, uh, she had sent me samples of what she was trying to advocate toward Wendy Carlos, who did the
Okay.
great soundtrack for Clockwork Orange and a lot of the work in The Shining. Uh, Fantastic work, and I love that work. But I was saying to Charlotte that it was thematically right in Clockwork Orange. It's a futuristic movie, and the Moog, which it was done on, has a new futuristic sound. And this film is 1888, 1868, 1888, 1918, 1948. contemporary. So I argued against it, although there is an element to it that still remained in much of the film. But she, when I was cutting the pieces together, I didn't have the other music with me, and I found the folder that had the Moog samples that she'd sent to me. And I thought, well, I'll use this just to cut together. Whether I'll use it or not, I don't know. But there was a certain amount of the imagery that kept elongating. And so and I've done it before. I did it in What Is It? It was with a Wagner piece where I just slowed it down. So I know it can sound good, uh, but I wasn't really doing it for that reason. I was just doing it so I had sound over the picture. It's a Vivaldi piece. But as it slowed down, uh, symbols, when you slow down, it was the same thing when I used Wagner. It gives it doesn't sound like a symbol. It sounds like some kind of rumbling. It has a lot of presence. And I slowed it down to more than 50%. I just had to keep lengthening it, slowing it down to lengthen it to fit the images. And then I looked at it and it was great. I loved it. It was just fantastic. And
Wow.
then I realized, wait a minute, I like this more than the film. I'm really liking what's happening sonically and visually. And I realized I I was already planning to do stuff with the film anyhow, but I just thought, no, I've got to incorporate this into the film now. And I recut. The film was 90 minutes. I cut 5 minutes of it out. I changed the beginning of the film. I made the whole beginning of the film start like that, and I reoriented the uh, a whole bunch of things in the film, and then I bought that exact piece of music in later. But yeah, music is extremely important. I mean, uh, particularly the opening, however many minutes it is silent film, which is essentially a different art form than sound film. Really, that is the purest cinema, is silent film. Uh, and then the music of silent film is I some director who is a silent era director, can't remember which one it was, said something to the effect of 80%, maybe he said 90% of the emotional quality of a silent film is the score. Uh, Probably 80 would be a proper way to put it. But although it's if it gets to the point that it's 90, really you should just listen to the music
Yeah.
and not be watching the film. So it would
Sure.
but it would be a good balance if it's 80-20. The music is just so important for the emotional content of what's going on. And because I grew up listening to, I don't like to say classical because really I like Baroque, I like the classical era, I like the Beethoven, post Beethoven romantic era, the modern, but I'm familiar with it. My mother was a ballet dancer and
Right.
danced in off Broadway, so or on Broadway, and so there were musical albums, but really there was a lot of ballet and orchestral music, and I liked it as a kid. So I grew up listening to it, and I'm familiar with the repertoire, and I feel like I can in the repertoire of music that's in public domain, every human emotion is represented. So with visual, uh, it's important to counter uh, that which is on screen as opposed to amplify. It's rare. It's sometimes amplification, maybe if it's something about tension or excitement, maybe. But generally, I find that opposite to what something is better. Because if somebody's sad, and then you play something sad, it's maudlin.
Right.
But if it has a twist to it, then it gives it depth. So I that's something I enjoy very much in the editing process, and the editing process is my favorite part of the filmmaking. Uh, the being on set is, I mean, I it's imperative. Everything's imperative, and it's just on set. There's a lot of stuff that you have to
Sure.
deal with, and there's lighting and smoke and uh, costume, wardrobe, hair, makeup, people, what they're doing. There's just a lot of stuff. That's kind of war. That's war. And then editing is the peace process, and you
Makes
put it
total
together. Although
sense.
you have to be brutal with the editing. That's if you're not brutal with the editing, it won't be good. You have
Right.
to really, and that's hard. It's hard to be hard on yourself, but that it's mandatory. I'm very glad I cut those 5 minutes out. It really made such a big difference for me with the film. I do like the film. It was like I'd watch the film and I liked it, but I always knew there were little things here and there, and I just then once I got to that stage, just like no, it didn't matter. Just get it rid of anything that I had any
Right.
ambivalent feeling at all. And yeah, it was 5 full minutes
That's a
of.
lot.
It's a lot for a 90-minute film.
Yeah,
Yeah, 85
absolutely.
minutes. Yeah,
Are you going to tour this as well with the slideshow? Is that the plan for this?
yeah. Yeah. I suppose I could have, against, in a certain way, this film is more because it wasn't designed to be corporately challenging. Uh,
Okay.
and it still might have a challenge, but if it was, it wouldn't be the kind of visceral. My sense is people are not going to get angry while watching this film in the way that people got angry about the first two films. I mean, most people didn't get angry, but most people found some kind of value. At least they would. That's what they would say to me. But they could be lying. My sense is people got value out of the films, and so I I'm very interested to see the I'm a little frazzled. There's a lot to do because it's what about 48 hours from now will be the I'll be over at the Museum of Modern Art getting set up and ready to have this genuine premiere.
Yeah, congratulations. I can't even imagine what you're feeling right now. I'm touched that we're talking, so thank you.
Well, it's like I'm it's more just it's more just well, I will be glad. There's always little things that there's probably going to be stuff. I haven't looked. I haven't. There was some audio stuff that was being dealt with. It wasn't music. It was just mixing. And when I was in Czech, I had a version of it, and they just uploaded something to me to listen to. Or no, not to listen to. I will be listening to it at the premiere.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't have the means to, because this is a DCP, which you have to have a particular mechanism for. I will. I keep my fingers crossed.
Oh
There's
my
not some
gosh.
gigantic. No, there. I don't think, because even though I have another DCP with me now, my first two films were shot on regular 16 millimeter with a digital intermediate, and then blown up to 35 millimeter film prints, which I traveled with. But even however many years ago this has been, what, 20 years, how long ago is 2005? 20 years ago. So even 20 years ago, there were more places that had 35 millimeter projection.
Yes.
I am going to make a 35 millimeter print of the film because there is a difference with the way the color adheres to the print. But at the same time, because this film was shot on 35, and we then part of the reason the color correction took so long, I'll give it a painstaking example of something that we did for the 1868 and the 1888 portions. We got one of the people in the Czech word Spolek for not-for-profit organization. I started with 5 Czech fellows, not-for-profit organization with 35 millimeter equipment for processing film. It's all at my property.
Wow.
It's not functioning but it's there.
Okay.
And there's a it's almost more of an insurance because I didn't know when this um, laboratory was started because my first production segment there was a great film laboratory at Bodendorf Studios in Prague, and the 1868 1888 portion I did my prints there for the It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine. I already have the property at that point, but I the first production segment that we shot, they did the laboratory work, great work, and then they closed
Ah,
out of nowhere.
oh,
And I didn't know the whole time I was shooting that there was a very good lab. It's an excellent laboratory. The guy who did the laboratory, he went and showed me the laboratory, is in a place called Zlín, which was a city essentially built by the guy who there's a Czech shoemaker named Bata, or at least that's the company name. And it's there's this anyway. There's a film. Carl Zeman shot some of his beautiful animated films in a not. It's actually not that big of a soundstage, but
mhm.
good. I mean, it was a good working soundstage. And the guy who started Bata, I don't know if that's his last name, made the studio for essentially for advertisements for his own shoemaking company, but he did all kinds of industrial stuff. It was pretty interesting. Anyhow, there's a very good laboratory, which I didn't know about. So I was having to process my film in 2 different laboratories in Germany and 1 or 2 different laboratories in Poland. I didn't know there was a place in Czech. It's a good place, so I'll be using that. But I did also when we started the not-for-profit, I didn't know that existed. So I was thinking I've got to have my own film laboratory in order to be able to process, which is a huge ordeal. Anyhow, so I had purchased a 35 millimeter scanner, a 4K scanner in Los Angeles, which I sent over, and one of the people in the Spolek made it retrofitted so it had certain modern capabilities, so I could scan my own film, which we did, and it worked. And then another guy in the Spolek happened to have a hand cranked camera that was owned by Carl Zeman. I don't know if you're familiar with Zeman, but
I'm not.
he's one of his he came from animation, but his visualization of it's some of the most beautiful cinematic constructions. It's just fantastic
Okay.
work. His version of Baron Munchausen is really incredibly beautiful.
Hmm.
One of the people in the Spolek owned his one of his cameras, which was a hand crank camera. So we used that hand crank camera to reshoot because everything had been shot in color, Fuji color, but then we reshot everything in 1868 and 1888 on a 2 or 4K monitor with monochrome black and white on the hand crank
Wow.
because we wanted to have it have an older look and feel.
Okay.
And then the cans that were the shots from 1868 were hand processed. František did my color corrections. He's also in the Spolek, and he hand processed like in buckets because it will give an uneven sort of quality. We wanted it to have an older look and feel. But the stuff for 1888, we had that processed at I think we had it processed at Zlin, and the Zlin laboratory. And then an animator like Melee's, if you're familiar with the from the early 1900s, where they would hand stain frame by frame
Yeah.
the color. And when you watch it projected, you can see it kind of dancing a bit.
It vibrates.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I can tell that the color that the art direction slash production design, they had flat backdrops that had big, thick black lines painted between things so that because that dye will spill over into something. So I would have art directed it in that way had but I didn't plan on doing this. It was just for various reasons. Well, it would work as a clue because the film cuts back and forth from era to era. There's some titles here and there that give an idea of what character's name or year is, but it will often jump back and forth. And so I thought, well, if I color correct each period differently, it's not that the audience will necessarily know, but they might feel it.
Yes,
But the
absolutely.
amount, so each of the five different eras had a completely different color correction situation.
Wow.
And this is part of why it took 2 years to color correct.
Well, I'm assuming it didn't take this long because you had Sean Lennon sing in your film.
Yeah, no, that was very. I wasn't there when it was recorded because Charlotte and Sean are engaged, and so that was recorded. I wasn't there when that was recorded. It was based on something, but he did a vocalization, kind of that throat sing. He did a great job. And yeah, it has a little bit of an acting quality. And yeah, I wasn't there directing. He just did it, and it was great. I'm very
Wow.
pleased with it.
Crispin, I just want to thank you so much. I will again put links to your website, but also where the film is playing in the next couple of weeks, and as it travels to Chicago, LA.
Yeah, Boston was added too, and I think I'm about to add Texas. I think where I've been before, the Texas theater in Dallas.
I'm really honored to have gotten to spend time with you today and ask some of these questions.
Well, thank you. It's very good to speak with you.
I'm really happy for you. I know
Thank
how long
you.
it takes and how much work it is to do what you do. And
Yeah.
especially like I feel like you are, I mean, I've seen it. You have a lot of people working with you on this, but I'm sure at times you felt like this is on my shoulders and I gotta get this done.
Well, yeah, it is. It's a different kind of process. Like I saw Quentin Tarantino has something where he's saying uh, he was worried. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but something to the effect of that he was worried when he first started. Might have even he was getting an advice from a filmmaker that had done a lot. Maybe it was Terry Gilliam. I'm not sure, but he was concerned about all the different departments and everything, and the how would he come up and have all of this, and if it was Terry Gilliam that gave him the advice, I'm not sure, but the filmmaker that was talking to him said, "You don't have to do that. You will hire people that help in with your vision." And but I generally work with volunteers. I pay for everything myself. I go broke doing it that way. This
Yeah,
is not a
totally.
cheap.
I
I've done it 3 times now. I mean, I have to I had to be very careful about my finances because of this.
sure.
Um, but like particularly on everything is fine. It is fine. Everything is fine. I was close to some real difficulty with that. So I'm particularly careful now. So um, the thing is, really, I mean, I did do production design work on this. I did do art. I give myself the credit on the things that I believe in, giving credits where credits are due. And there are different people that do different things. That's also why the credits are so important, and that the IMDb is not listing the proper credits. So that's why I've sent everybody out with the proper credit roll, because different
Right.
people do a lot of different things. But yes, when you're making a film like this, you really, and that's another reason things took a while. There was title work that took a long time, and I had to self teach for various reasons. I thought I had something figured out with the title work, but I didn't. I wouldn't approach the title work in the way that I did. I would use in-camera title work. I did some digital title work, and it really is better to shoot on film, in camera, everything that you can shoot, and not rely digitally. Digital is great, but it can be troublesome as well.
Right. You're talking about the titles that stretch out like that. Is that, or
That's one of them. That one actually wasn't so hard. There were
okay.
some, it looks like it would be, but it was one of the titles that took a long time was the train with the smoke turning into and there was just it's the Czech Republic as well. So and the people that I work with are good, but sometimes I've been there a long time now, and I am used to the culture shock, but it's different. Just things are different. The way the culture's structured, the way monetary elements are structured, it's just. And Kafka. Before I read Dostoevsky, Kafka was my favorite writer, and there's still something he wrote. He wrote in the German language, but he was in Prague. He was Czech, and there's something he was reacting to that I can still feel there. But
It seems like you're in the
it's
right
worth it.
spot, you know. I
Yes,
mean, yeah.
yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, again, a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Usually at the end of every episode, I ask the same question, but I tailor it depending on what we're talking about. But I'm just going to give it to you. I'm going to say to you, I'm giving you one dude, one man, one kick, one beautiful film that's coming up. I just want to say, like, between your music, your handmade books, the slideshows, your films, I really appreciate what you've done. I feel for like my generation in a funny way. Like it really meant a lot to have somebody who were like, oh yeah, Crispin Glover is just a total original. And when we see him in something, we're just going to support it. So I just wanted to say thank you. You know,
Well, I hope so. I'll keep my fingers crossed. I hope people come out. That'll be nice. But I do appreciate it when people come out. I always thank the audience, and it is important. So I thank you for
we'll be there.
being
We'll
that.
be there.
I thank you very much. It's enjoyable talking to you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday on your favorite podcast app and additional bonus episodes every Sunday on our Patreon. The show is a completely independent affair, so the best way to support the show is through our Patreon at patreon.com/revolutionspermovie, where you can get weekly bonus episodes and shows, exclusive limited edition flexi discs and records and CDs featuring guests that have appeared on the show, and other exclusive goods sent to you just for joining. You can follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie and also find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye!